Come on, Livingston. We gotta go on and on and on. Together we can make it. We gotta go on and on and on. Come on, Livingston.
Knocks it through. Mullen bursting into the box. Josh Mullen.
Together we can make it.
Mullen's ball across, it's turned in! It's Pittman who's got it! Livingston leads!
Road is long.
Can they get the ball back in? O'Brien.
Lead! And Livingston have the lead!
Man, can score.
If we march together.
The full-time whistle blows and David Hayes celebrates! And the Livingston fans join in exultation.
Come on, Livingston.
Livingston have the lead against Rangers, and they are certainly rising to a few occasions on their return to the top flight in Scotland.
Come on, Livingston. We gotta go.
Hello and welcome back to Talk Livi, the podcast dedicated to everything Livingston Football Club and Scottish football. My name's Euan, and today I'm joined as usual by Angus. Angus, how did you enjoy the wee break?
Yeah, not too bad. Obviously, a break from club football. You obviously had the World Cup to take over, which, was a quite a slow starting tournament, but one that, eventually brought us a lot of drama and, the outcome that I eventually wanted in the end. So, yeah, decent little enough break, but, very much glad to, have our team back in action and, back to games and that very soon. But, yeah, what about yourself?
Yeah, it was a mixed bag. Me and Shannon had a trip to Skye. I also had a weekend I spent in hospital because I started choking when I was at a restaurant, and then it didn't go away. So I ended up spending the weekend in hospital. I'm all good, don't worry. And I've been cutting up my dinner really, really small, so I don't choke. You'll be glad to know. And amongst that, enjoying the World Cup as well. As you say, it was a bit of a slow burner, the first round of fixtures, but it really kicked into life after that. And the kind of fairy tale ending, wasn't it, where Messi finally lifting the one thing he's not won. So yeah, it was a bit of a fairy tale ending to that, and have a soft spot for Argentina because in my opinion the real GOAT is a Scottish football icon, which is Diego Maradona. So as always, you can find this episode as well as all our others on your preferred podcast streaming site. Just search for Talk Livi, so follow us or subscribe to ensure that you don't miss another episode.
We'll kick off the episode by discussing our mid-season break in the chat during the World Cup break.
Next up, it was a trip to Glasgow as the Lions took on the champions, but despite a valiant effort, it ended in a narrow defeat.
And finally, we look ahead to our festive fixtures as we travel to Easter Road to take on Hibs before St Mirren make the trip to West Lothian.
The unusual World Cup break gave the Lions a chance to regroup and even go on a European tour. Before that, though, we made the trip down to Loftus Road in London to take on QPR and a familiar face in Lyndon Dykes. It would end in a 2-1 defeat, but there was plenty of positives to be taken from the game. Joe Nubley grabbed our goal. I think we're 2-0 down at half-time. Good opposition. We were playing against the Championship team, which are in and around the playoffs just now, so pretty decent account of ourselves, wasn't it?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I think if you look at it just on the plain basis of, how long ago, 18 months or, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that they splashed out the cash, to make our record ever transfer sale. They took our best player kind of off us very, very easily. You're looking at, that's the kind of opposition you're kind of dealing with there. Obviously, we talk about, the finances that Celtic and Rangers and that have. Teams like QPR and that will be kind of operating on possibly quite a similar basis. Maybe not in terms of, well, actually, they probably are got players who are on quite stupid money down there. So you're talking about that as quite a hike in terms of the circumstances. And to go down to London as well, just for kind of friendly, put a good account of ourselves in. I think that's very encouraging to see as well. And, it kind of shows the decent links that we have. Obviously, I think that this fixture was put in place because of perhaps Martin Dale's, connection, what he had with Gerrard and Beale, obviously being there, Beale obviously leaving to take charge of charge of Rangers. But yeah, I think that there's plenty within that to be happy about. And our goal for Joel Newbley as well. Hopefully that can breed some confidence into him into these upcoming games as well.
Also saw a cameo for one of the development players as well, which is a big positive, and hopefully we can see more of that as the youth setup kind of beds in and players start getting a wee bit more exposure and the opportunity to kind of step up into the first team in the future. But a couple of trialists were involved as well. I think the Lucas centre back that was involved, who's been playing over in Finland. I think Davey had mentioned he's been in with us before, but certainly a bit of chat from Davey with Jack Fitzwater being out of contract. He's willing to listen to offers. You reckon it's a bit of a case of he might come in if we shift Fitzwater on?
I think Callum Carson kind of alluded to that, didn't he? I think he said that one of his interviews with Davey, that he's basically said that Davey really fancies Eddie Lucas, but it's more of a fact of we don't kind of necessarily have that free wage at the moment. So I think necessarily we're waiting to see if we can shift somebody on, whether that be Fitzwater or that be, I don't know, maybe somebody else perhaps will maybe see somebody depart on loan, which will free up a couple of £100 a week or something like that for us to be able to bring in the Lucas in. But it's good to see from that aspect. Obviously, the kind of the planning for the future. Obviously, it's going to be very sad to see Fitzwater leave if that's the chance. But we've got a replacement there lined up who the club have clearly done some extensive research on as well. I think that'll be the most kind of pleasing aspect of that, and hopefully, somebody can come in and hit the ground running because it'll be big shoes to fill.
Yeah, exactly. It would be big shoes to fill. I mean, Fitzy's last season in particular, he was excellent. Actually surprises me that a club like Hibs aren't sniffing about Jack Fitzwater with it being confirmed that Ryan Porteous is going to move on. So I wouldn't be overly surprised if you saw that materialise further down the line. But certainly from what I saw in the QPR game and the games over in Turkey, which we'll come on to, the Lucas looked a more than adequate replacement, even if it is maybe for 18 months or so. But he certainly had a bit about him, good on the ball, big presence as well. So that's maybe one that might materialise further into the January window when that opens up. But we travelled to Turkey to take part in the most coveted European trophy that's kicking about, one that Messi hasn't won, which is the Titanic Cup, to take on FK Liepāja of Latvia and Fortuna Sittard, who play in the Eredivisie in Holland. But again, very good showing from us against what I'd expect to be a pretty decent standard opposition, a 4-1 win and then a 3-0 win, which saw us lift the Titanic Cup and finally get that star above the crest.
I still think it's absolutely mental to think, obviously the history of Livingston is just ravished with, financial issues and whatnot. I just still think it's hilarious that we've now reached this stage where we're able to send our team on like a winter training camp. I still think that's just absolutely mad. You hear, I think, teams going and doing this at warm weather training, and I never ever expected that Livingston would be able to be a team who would do so, jetting off our players to go and do so. But yeah, you're spot on again with the terms of the opposition. Obviously, don't know too much about the Latvian side, but playing a team in Holland, I think who were sitting, I think there's 16 teams in Holland. I think they might have been sitting about 10 for something at that time. Decent enough side, kind of one of the better leagues within Europe, one of the more kind of well-known ones as well. Well, out with of your main top five, and to kind of comfortably take them on and defeat them is very impressive. And I mean, I hope that's a sign of where we're at, and in terms of how we kept things ticking over the break. Not allowing any complacency. I think one of the main things from that game that's seen on Twitter was the fact that the opposition, called the Livingston manager David Martindale an absolute lunatic or something along those lines. So I think that just shows you, Davies taking this break as not a holiday at all. The hard work's been done. The standards have been set, and that's great to see. And it ended up in us getting that coveted first trophy of the season. Hopefully, there's more to follow it.
It's obviously quite nice to go out there and play teams that you're not familiar with. That gives you a different sort of test. And as you say, Fortuna Sittard, they're an Eredivisie side. They're not going to be mugs. But I mean, that tweet, seeing the translation getting described, Davey, as a lunatic on the touchline. I mean, it's good to see that we are going abroad and keeping up the good cinch name. and spreading the word off the cinch around Europe. But I tell you what, we'll come on to it when we go to Celtic Park, but I actually think it was quite disgusting from Celtic that they didn't provide us a guard of honour going out at Celtic Park. I thought that's when the lights came down. I thought that's what was happening. We were getting a guard of honour out onto the pitch, you know, the most successful Scottish side in Europe this season. And quite disrespectful from Celtic. I thought better of them, but there you go.
Really?
We also
You
saw
better of that lot? Really?
it's I'm being nice. I'm being nice. I'm feeling festive, Angus. But we did see a glimpse of our first January signing, which is Stephen Bradley, who's come in from Hibs, young winger, 20-year-old, spent a spell out at Dundalk and also was at Ayr United on loan in spells. And certainly from what I saw of the games, he looks like he could offer something going forward.
Yeah, it seems to be another attacking option. I think one of the things that we've talked about for most season is that we're probably a bit light in the attacking front, mainly kind of play with players who can play, you know, naturally out wide, and you know, he seems to be somebody who fits the bill. Seems to be a very, very strange one, that because I don't ever remember him getting, you know, too much of a chance at Hibs. It seems like a very kind of odd decision to, you know, be able to just punt a player without kind of like properly trying him. Like you've got two ends of the Hibs fans, you know, one half of them saying, "Oh, like he's clearly not good enough. Like we can, like it's completely fine to get rid." And then another half who are, you know, saying like, "Oh, this could very much come back to haunt us." I think, you know, not an awful lot of footage has been seen of him. I don't think he's been tested enough to kind of make up either of those. But you know, hopefully, you know, he is somebody who can come in and hit the ground running and make a difference. You know, the way that he's played in those couple of games there. I mean, a couple of games as trialist, he scored in both of them, I believe. You know, hopefully it's another exciting player. Everybody who's like seen him so far seems to be raving about him. Some good words from the couple of players who, you know, spoken about him in the local paper as well, like Ben Rice and Devlin were chatting about him. And yeah, hopefully it's just another person who, you know, sees Livingston as this place where, you know, they can get an actual opportunity rather than, you know, at these bigger clubs who are, you know, not really interested in properly developing the players. Hopefully they can come here, take advantage of the opportunity, and, you know, we can get the rewards off of that.
Yeah, absolutely. As we've spoke about at length, probably since the first episode of the season, was we probably need another wide option. And Bahan has obviously been converted into playing as a wide player, and he's gradually settled into the side. We know Joel probably looks at his best playing out wide, but other than that, it's a lot of, well, he can play there and do a job there. Whereas having watched the clips of kind of Bradley in the two games over in Turkey, he's an out-and-out winger. Bit like Odin Bailey, I would say. Predominantly would play on the right-hand side, coming inside onto his left foot. But he has looks like a very cultured left foot. And from the Hibs fans that I've spoke to, they're quite disappointed that Hibs have let him go and not given him an opportunity. So I'll take that as a positive. And as you say, the comments from Penners and Nicky as well. So hopefully he's a really good signing going forward. Obviously, we won't see him until any potential debut would be the Motherwell game on the 2nd or 3rd of January. So maybe see a bit of him. Davey hinted at possibly send him out on loan, but I think he'll probably stick around for the season, to be honest, and maybe next year get moved out if need be for 6 months. But yeah, a very positive signing. I think it's a age bracket we don't have a lot of in the squad, I would say. So it adds to that as well. But certainly a positive winter break, which set us up nicely for what should have been the Dundee United game, but it turned out to be a trip to Celtic Park instead, which we'll get on to next.
After our home game against Dundee United was called off, it would be a trip to Celtic Park, which would see the Lions return to competitive action. Despite a Nicky Devlin equaliser, what the fuck am I going to say? Despite him pulling a goal back, Euan, Jesus, it would end a 2-1 defeat for the Lions. What was your take on the game? And toughest kind of game for us to come back to, right?
Yes. You were kind of hoping for the Dundee United game. It was obviously a shame that game got called off, but for those who maybe are having a dig at the pitch being an all-weather pitch, I mean, it's not an all-weather pitch for a starter. I was coaching on the Saturday morning at Ainsley Park, which has a 3G surface as well, and it was brick hard, wouldn't take studs, wouldn't take a key through the rubber. So I can absolutely understand why the game was called off, and certainly the surrounding areas, I think, were probably a cause for concern. You'd probably have a better idea of that.
Oh, you should have seen the state of we had our GS night out, well, like player of the year kind of award thingy in the stadium bar, and see the stairs that, like, the ones going up the bubbles where, the main bulk of your supporters will be coming from, just completely layered in ice. Me trying to get up that at, like 12 o'clock at night, in the pitch black, -6 degrees and fancy shoes. That wasn't a great sight. So I can only imagine how bad it would be for, hundreds of people coming down there. But yeah, definitely not fit for the conditions at all.
But as I say, it meant we finally played this rearranged game against Celtic, and we set up with a 5-4-1. Jackson Longridge played at the left-hand side of a back three. When I saw the lineup, that's kind of what I was hazarding a guess that we might be doing, and it kind of materialised that way, playing a tight four in the middle of the park and Bruce up top on his own. And as the case is, when you go to Celtic Park or Ibrox, not to upset Ange and put them in the same bracket, by the way, they're two different teams, let's be clear. I know we had a bit of a gripe with that during the week when folk labelled them.
It's such a weird one, that, really. I think for most people, they obviously talk about them as that because, they are the two biggest teams, the biggest finances, they've got the history, they've got the support and all of that. It's not been microanalyzed to be like, oh yeah, he's playing the exact same. She's a grumpy wee dick sometimes, isn't he?
I think that's an Aussie thing as well. I don't know if it's just an Aussie thing, but
Falcon cars like that.
Quite possibly, maybe it is. No, but it was always going to be the case that we were going to need to sacrifice a lot of the ball and be disciplined in our shape. But where I would say, if you compare Celtic to when we played them at Celtic Park last October, when we drew 0-0, in comparison to the game here, that team under Postecoglou came on leaps and bounds. Even from then, it's frightening the difference in them. And that day, they kind of played into our hands, a bit like what we described with Rangers. It's a lot of floated crosses into the box, for us to head away. Where they were causing us the problems was particularly down our left-hand side with Montano and Jacko. And it was Abada and Ralston that were causing all the problems. But Abada kept putting balls zipped across our 6-yard box. Hatate was getting in down that side as well quite a lot. But certainly Hatate had an effort which went wide. As I mentioned, that first goal comes off our left-hand side. Abada's put the ball across. And again, he's zipping it across the 6-yard box, bit lower, not floated. And essentially Obalai can't really sort his feet out. He's a bit unfortunate, and he puts it into the roof of the net. Have to say, Ivan Konovalov had a pretty good game, albeit his kicking was a bit suspect at times, but in terms of his shot stopping, I think he kept us in the game, certainly first half. Hatate had a chance, which he came out quickly to, and Kyogo had a very similar chance as well, which he came out quickly to as well. There was a VAR check for a handball with Nicky Devlin. I think it was Hatate that hit the shot as well. Not a handball for me. Nicky's arms are pretty much as tucked in as you can have them, and right decision was made. But we then conceded that second goal just about on the stroke of half time, and again it was down that side for us. I think both Montano and Jacko are looking at Ralston rather than watching the run in behind from Abada, and he's put the ball across, and it's a pretty typical kind of Kyogo goal, win about the penalty box and a one-touch finish from him, and it's well taken. From a Celtic perspective, very good goal, but I think from us, as I say, Montano and Jacko are both kind of watching the ball rather than watching the runner going in behind them. But we got back in the game with a goal from Nicky Devlin. It's great initial play by Bruce Anderson to knock the ball in behind. Fair play to Nicky for bombing forward and getting in there and using his strength to get in there and poke the ball home. And it gives you a lifeline and keeps you in the game, because you're 2-0 down at Celtic Park. It's at half time, it's a bit damaged limitations. There's only so much you can do in terms of trying to go for the game, whilst that allowed us maybe the first 15-20 minutes of the second half to have a wee bit of a go, which we did. And Stephen Kelly had a good effort which was saved by Joe Hart. Montano had a long range effort as well, which went wide. But I think there's two things which probably disrupted our flow in the game. One was the VAR check for the disallowed goal from Abada. Why it took so long, I don't know, because for me, it's an obvious offside.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't have taken as long as it did to make the decision. And then probably the other thing which disrupted our flow in the game was one sub in particular, I think, didn't give us much of an out ball, which was Isma Goncalves. Not normally one for digging players out on here, but it wasn't good enough from him. When you saw, I'll use Andrew Shinnie as the example to compare him. Andrew Shinnie was holding up the ball on 2 or 3 occasions when he came on the park against 2 or 3 players from the opposition and holding on to the ball and keeping possession for us. Whilst Isma just wasn't doing that. He wasn't battling enough to keep a hold of the ball and get us up the park and try and give us an opportunity to have an out ball. And that was slightly disappointing, as I say, disrupted our flow. But look, no argument. Celtic deserved to win the game. They dominated the ball. They created the best chances throughout the game. But credit to us for being as disciplined as we were in the game, and credit to us for having a little bit of a go when we could. There was a couple of counter-attack situations I know Davey mentioned, which we didn't quite make use of. But as I say, I'm quite proud of the performance that we stuck in there, because it's easy when you go a couple of goals down at Celtic Park to, just go for damage limitations and try and keep the score down or potentially get hiding. So for us to stay competitive in the game and take it to the final whistle, I think the players deserve a fair bit of credit for that.
Yeah, we're looking at a Celtic team who, Postecoglou's been there for just over like a season and a half now. They've scored 200 goals or something like that. So this team have got plenty of ammunition amongst them. And when it gets to 2-0 as well, it's very much easy, especially against Celtic at Celtic Park with that support behind us to just kind of like drop the heads. But bouncing back so quickly, giving us that glimpse of hope. Every time that we play kind of these teams away from home, especially, it is kind of known as a free hit for us. Obviously, some people won't like kind of it being referred to that, but it largely is because of just the massive gulf and kind of differentiating and finances, stature, fan support, whatever like that. It is a complete mismatch. But for us to first game back from the break, to come back to that and put a decent enough showing in. We're still showing that we're to a reasonable extent, kind of got that solidity within us, and can punish teams, whenever. That first half, one shot on target, 1 goal. Can't get much better than that.
Not bad XG, is it? Lee Johnson would be creaming himself over that XG.
Much to the dismay of Celtic fans on Twitter who still can't understand why a team like Livingston would choose to operate in this kind of way. But you're never going to win those people over. But yeah, I think for the most part, we're looking at this game and saying that anything is a bonus from it, and the fact that we've came away from it. The goal difference as well hasn't taken a massive hit either. We've not had anything kind of puts a massive dent into the confidence or whatnot. So yeah, plenty to kind of be happy about, and the next kind of couple of games are where we'll be looking to take the points from.
Yeah, exactly. In the grand scheme of things, games against Celtic and Rangers for us over the course of the season are not what our season's going to be based on. And as I say, going there, there'll be folk who think it's pessimistic, but going there and saying a goal defeat, you'd probably take that going away to Celtic Park or Ibrox. Come away, not a lot of damage done in terms of, as you say, not shifting 5 or 6 goals and staying competitive in the game. Aberdeen were widely criticised at the weekend for being very negative against Celtic. I felt, I know the old firm like to give out, come and have a go awards. Well, for 15, 20 minutes, I think we did try and have a go. So we deserve the plaudits for doing that and trying to attack when we could. As I say, there was areas in that kind of 15, 20 minutes after half time where we had 2 or 3 opportunities to counter-attack. We didn't quite make the best of it. And it might have made it a wee bit more interesting at the end. But, I mean, all you need to do is look at the options that Celtic brought off the bench. Yakimakis, Turnbull, Jota was brought off. Aaron Moy, who's just been playing at the World Cup, was brought on as well. Celtic have the potential to field two different teams and still win this league. That's how good their squad depth is at this moment in time. And you were at Ibrox with myself recently, and it's night and day between the two sides, in my opinion, at this moment in time. And Michael Beale certainly has a massive job in his hands to claw that gap back with Celtic. But certainly talking about ourselves, what did you make of the tactical tweaks that Davy made, especially, as I say, Jacko going in to play centre back? When you have Morgan Boys on the bench, who obviously came on as well.
Perhaps, Boys has not been, fully fit for this season, so that's maybe what I was thinking is possibly the thinking for that switch in particular. I think maybe the issue was that, Boyce was getting back to full fitness, and he obviously picked up that red card, which happened, not too long before the break came to happen. So I don't know if in a way that Jacko was just a little bit more match fit than him. He played against like Kilmarnock and that kind of not too long before the break, a bit more kind of game time this season for sure. Obviously it's a bit strange having, an unnatural kind of centre half playing in there. Maybe that would have helped us solidify things a bit more. But in terms of the tactics and all that, it's in all honesty what we're kind of expecting from it. It's going to be a different story when we play Hibs and St Mirren. But it's what we've come to expect in these kind of games, and it's what we kind of have to do in all honesty. So no real major complaints there. I think again for Davey, it just shows the fact that I was looking at that team when it kind of came out, and I was a little bit concerned. But the way they kind of battle on and all of that, you can manage to get, that extra 10% out of players, which is very encouraging.
Yeah, the other thing I saw a few fans comment on, and it was actually quite funny in the car on the way there listening to Super Scoreboard, because there was some, and I say this sarcastically, Livingston fans complaining about Newbley not starting with very thick Glaswegian accents. So I feel it might have been Rangers fans who were backing us, to be honest, on the night, and were quite.
Are you saying that Rangers fans are saying we lay down for Celtic now, and not the other way around?
Honestly, the conspiracies are frightening. But that's at the end of the day. Joel didn't start the game. He also didn't come off the bench. I had Dylan Bahamboula. Don't want to be someone that reads too much into it, but for me, it was a case of, as we described it, Celtic's your free hit. Do you reckon he's maybe trying to keep Joel and Dylan fit? Because we've got quite a lot of games coming up in terms of between now and the end of January. So is it a case of just managing the squad a little bit there as well?
I'm hoping so. I'm hoping that, we're going to be unleashing Newbley in particular against Hibs after, the success that he got last time against them. I think that'll be very key for us. But I think, with the kind of the tight schedule, we've got 3 games from tomorrow until the 2nd of January, which is, very, very quick turnover. You're talking about that's the best part of, 8-9 days or something like that. So a game every 3 days or so. So hopefully, there is not any issues, not any niggles or anything like that, and hopefully, they'll be fully fit for us to go into these upcoming games.
Well, it was defeat in the end, but certainly a lot of positives to take from it, and hopefully we can take those positives into our trip to the capital to take on Hibs, which we'll talk about next. Next up for the Lions is the short trip to Leith to take on Hibs at Easter Road. Angus, how you feeling ahead of this one? We've certainly had Hibs' number the last few times we've played them.
Yeah, I feel like when we play Hibs, we kind of always talk about the same thing. I feel like this is just basically going to be, the same kind of things that I go on about. I just feel like you can get at them. I feel like at times there's a bit of a soft touch, and I don't think Lee Johnson's quite hit the ground running as maybe some Hibs fans had hoped. I don't think a lot of the signings are kind of came into fruition as well. So I think for Hibs this season, they're still going into January with a whole bunch of maybes, and they're obviously talking about a lot of players as well who might be getting moved on. I think there's a boy up front, Bojang, who's already getting punted. The boy Cabrera at left back. I think there's a couple of people speculating about his future. Obviously, Porteous is going to be away. Is he going to be possibly somebody who leaves in January? Barton Boyle's out injured. Kevin Nisbet's just came back as well. A couple of striking options as well. The boy McCurdy's not really, taking the chances that he's had so far. You've got the Kukurayev, Melkerson and that. I feel like individually you look at Hibs and there's a couple of like decent players who you think that on their day they can cause like a bit of damage, but as a team they just don't seem to properly gel. And I feel like there's kind of like two Hibs teams that you can see, and I think that was most easily identifiable in that game against Rangers, where that first half against Rangers when they went 2-1 up, they were great and creating an abundance of chances and they're kind of like fighting. Second half though was a complete different story and they just kind of sat in, and I don't think they have that solidity to do that against like a side like Rangers as well. So I thought that was kind of a bold choice to go for. But as you say, we've had their number over the last couple of times there, and hopefully we can do that again. I think the midfield battle can be something that we can exploit. I think the tenacity that we have in the middle of the park with like Savomionga, Holt, Pittman, and everything like that. I think that's been very crucial for us in recent times. You look at the amount of goals that we've scored against Hibs in recent years, where it's the harrying and hassling that's won as a ball on a counter attack, and the attacking players have ended up having quality to finish it in the end. Obviously, nobody done it this season. We had the Alan Forrest one last year as well. So hopefully that's the kind of thing. I feel like, going into Hibs, I feel like perhaps there's a wee bit of underestimating that comes in with them with us. I think that they still look at us as little Livingston, who don't deserve to be in the Premiership. They don't deserve to be with a massive team like Hibs. Put that in quotations, I guess. And they want to. I think they want to view themselves as this kind of Scottish kind of like juggernaut within the league, but the kind of like the recent track record shows that they can't be thinking like that because they're not comfortably that better than anybody, in all honesty. I think it's always a good game between us. I think it's always very competitive with, lots of chances between the both sides. And it's one that I'm very much looking forward to, a Christmas Eve game. An earlier 2:00 kickoff. If anybody's listening, make sure you don't show up at 3:00 for the second half. But yeah, one that I'm very much looking forward to.
Yeah, as you say, it's a bit deja vu whenever we talk about playing Hibs, be it at Easter Road or at home. But I just feel that we are a team that is so unsuitable to Hibs. The way we play, and they just suit us down to a T. I think they've got a very soft core about them. Whilst that's probably our strength, is we're very difficult to break down. We're quite aggressive as well off the ball. So it's one of these games that I just always have confidence that we can take something from. But as you mentioned, Hibs do have quality throughout, in areas of the park. Nisbet coming back, I'm sure will be a big bonus for them if he can start hitting a bit of form. Obviously, he grabbed a goal at Ibrox the first game back, so that'll probably do his confidence a world of good. But I think we said just before we started doing this segment, is it 1 win in 7 or 8 in the Premiership for Hibs? It's probably close to similar form that saw Jack Ross get sacked last season. It's not far off that, but I've said quite a lot speaking to Hibs fans. If you look at Lee Johnson's track record when he was down the south with Sunderland, Bristol City, he was a very streaky manager. He would go on a run like this, but then follow it up with a run of maybe 5-6 wins on the bounce. So that's the thing that's given me the fear, is he's a manager that has this sort of track record, and this run of form can't carry on forever. So they're bound to get a result at some point. So that's the thing we need to be wary of. But if we go there and play in the manner that we have in recent weeks, I think we're more than capable of going to Easter Road and getting a result. And looking at Hibs' form at home, they've won 4, lost 2, and drawn 2 in their home games so far. So their home form's certainly better than their form away from Easter Road. So we need to be wary of that, and we need to be wary of the threats that Hibs have. But I'm confident that we can get at them, especially if Joel's available. I feel that'll make a big difference, because I've never been convinced by the Hibs centre-halves, despite the build-up Porteous gets. As much as I was made to eat my words when I was over in Krakow on his Scotland debut against Ukraine, I'm still not convinced with Porteous, but I feel Joel can ruffle them up and certainly get us up the park and cause a lot of problems. If Davy needs to look at a game at Easter Road, I think the last visit there when Alan Forrest scored that winner, the second half performance was where we got our joy. We pushed 10, 15 yards further up the park on top of Hibs, not allowing them to try and play out. And I think we need to go with that same approach again, really get in their face, upset them from the get-go, get the crowd who are already a bit anxious just now at Easter Road, turning on the team a little bit. And I think that's where we can start getting our joy in the game.
I think as well, an added factor to it is I think that Hibs' next fixtures after us are Celtic and Hearts. So, if you come into this game and, things aren't going too well for them, they're going to be definitely getting on their backs. I think Davey's talked about this against Hearts before earlier in the season where, you're looking to turn the support against them. And I think, Hibs will be a prime example of that. I think we obviously talked about that there. It's only 1 win in 8. It's 7 losses in that. It's not even as if it's draws as well. So, if you made that, if we got like an early goal, you can only imagine. It'll be kind of similar to, what happened when we played at Ibrox earlier this season where, that early goal could, just really create like a very toxic atmosphere. With them also having the knowledge that, this is very much their best chance of getting points out of probably the next 3 games. Ahead of, one against Celtic, it's probably going to be very tough. And then obviously the derby, which, if there's a poor showing in that, then Johnson could very well be shown, the door following that. But, optimistic. Hopefully we can go there and, get like a decent point. I guess we should go into our predictions for now. Euan, what are you going to go for?
I'm going to go for a draw. I'm going to go 2 each. I think it'll be a wee festive cracker, Angus. Oh, God, that was terrible. A wee goal fest. I'm going to go 2 each. I just feel Hibs need to stop this rot at some point, and it could be against ourselves. But if I'm totally honest, I'd probably take a point away at Easter Road regardless most times. So, yeah, I'm going to go 2 each. What about yourself?
I'll do one better, and I'm going to go for, I think this fixture's had to score having quite a lot of times, particularly at Easter Road. I'm going to go for us to win 3-2. And you're going to follow suit with you predicting, quite a decent game. I always do feel like they are very interesting games. I feel like the styles between us can kind of blend to give, both sides, kind of like decent enough opportunities. And I'm going to tip us to, to get over the line as well. So 3-2 for us.
Oh, I'd happily take that. That would be probably the best Christmas present I can get. No offence, Shannon, as much as I love my new football. But our next game is a home game against St Mirren. Just as we were talking about, we've had Hibs number in recent times. St Mirren are a team that seem to have had our number in recent times, take away the cup semi-final out of that. How are you feeling for this one? This one, I'm never that confident in recent times against St Mirren.
Well, what I've said about us v Hibs being like decent games, Livi v St Mirren are always absolutely dog shit games. Absolutely awful. Not looking forward to this one at all. And, they are that kind of frustrating side, for us in recent years where we've not been able to, take too many points off of them. I think the one earlier this season where we threw it away is, absolutely criminal in that regard as well. But, I think St Mirren are a little bit of a different side. I think if we'd played them maybe, before the break or, maybe back in, November time or that. But I think they've came through a bit of more of a rougher kind of patch of form. I think they're, to be fair, the last game before the break they did draw with Rangers, but I think they had, they lost to Ross County. I think they got scalped by Hibs as well. So I think they've kind of, petered off a little bit from, the kind of highs they were at the start of the season, but, still very much a very solid side who, will kind of cause problems as well with, you look at that midfield that they've got right now with, Bacchus coming from the World Cup. O'Hara's had a very good season. You got Erhan as well. So there's a lot of players in there who are talented footballers. They're not only just kind of a tough side to break down, but hopefully there'll be a wee bit more quality on show here and a bit of better luck for us this time round too.
Yes, St Mirren are very much a Jekyll and Hyde side, home and away. And if St Mirren had a plastic pitch, it would be getting a lot of talk right now for the unfair advantage they have in it. But if you look at the home and away league table, so St Mirren have played 9 at home, won 5, drawn 3, lost 1. If you compare that to their away form, they've played 6 away from home, they've won 1 and lost 5. They've only scored 6 goals away from home, and they've conceded 17 as well away from home. So they're very much a Jekyll and Hyde side when it comes to their home and away form, as I say, which we are statistically pretty decent at home. over the course of the time that we've been back in the top flight. So it's a game that we really, really need to be targeting, in my opinion, for 3 points. And again, pushing up the table and trying to stay in touch with the teams. Because at this moment in time, we're in a good position to try and make a fist of certainly going for the top 6 as a minimum, which gives you a great opportunity of going for European football. So we need to try and stay in touch, because our fixtures over the next month are pretty favourable on paper in terms of picking up points. And Saturday against Hibs is probably where that kicks off. But a home game against St Mirren, with the way that their away form has been, it's a game we really need to be targeting 3 points for. It's going to be a very difficult game. As I say, our recent record against St Mirren kind of speaks for itself. I'm trying to even think of the last league win that we had against them. I think it would probably be a midweek game when London Dykes scored the winner just after half-time. Would probably be the last time that we beat them in the league. So that's going back to our City season in the top flight. So it's a fair while ago since we got one over on them in the league. So we need to put that record right, I feel, and pick up 3 points. But Stephen Robinson's gone in there, and despite when he went in last year, when he replaced Goodwin, almost getting dragged into a bit of a relegation scrap, he's really settled the ship there. Again, I'm not going to listen to Stephen Robinson tell me that his teams play attractive football. They don't. They're very difficult to break down, very physical, and I think it'll be a very physical game against St Mirren. When they're forward, Curtis Main's been in pretty decent form this season. I think it's Ayunga has caused a lot of problems as well, and he made a great save in the last game at St Mirren as well. Superb, right across the goal to deny Bruce Anderson. But yeah, they do have threats amongst the pack. As I say, Ayunga's caused a lot of problems. Curtis Main's hit a wee bit of form this season, I feel, as well. And he's big physical presence up there too. So, and as you say, they've made a couple of decent acquisitions in the summer. Boy Strain at full back, as well as Bacchus, who's just been at the World Cup with Australia. So they're a good, solid side, St Mirren. So we're going to need to be. I think we're going to need to be good in possession. I think we're going to need to move the ball quite quickly as well, or as quickly as we can, to try and open them up a little bit, because they're probably going to come to us and play on the break a little bit. So yeah, we need to be very good on the ball, I feel. And I think if we can get a goal early against them, that might allow us to open them up a little bit more.
Yeah, I guess we'll just go to predictions for this one as well. Obviously this is going to be the 28th, 7:45 kickoff. What are you going to go with?
I'm going to go for a home win. I'm going to go 2-0. 2-0 to the Lions of West Lothian, the Titanic Cup holders. And that'll be a nice 3 points to go into the new year with. What about yourself?
I am picturing, the most freezing, absolute awful game of football. 1-1 is what I'll predict. Everybody leaving being like, I'm glad that's over. Never will I think about that game ever again.
Good to see you're in festive spirits, Angus.
Hey, when the Hibs won, absolutely. St Mirren at home.
I'll give you that.
No chance.
Well, here's hoping you're right for the Hibs game, and here's hoping I'm right for the St Mirren game, and it's a maximum 6 points from the next 2 games. But yeah, let us know your predictions when we put them up before the games as well.
That's it for this week's episode of Talk Livi. Thanks again to every single one of you for tuning in week and week out. If you can, we'd love to hear your feedback, so either leave us a review on iTunes or simply message us on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram.
As Angus said, we're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Search Talk Livi to find us, and you'll find all the links to our weekly episodes on there as well. You can also find all our episodes, including this one, on all good podcast streaming sites, including iTunes and Spotify. We're also on YouTube, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And if none of those options suit you, all you have to do is head to our website, talklivipodcast.libsyn.com, where you'll find every single episode we've done over the last few years.
That's it for this week. Thanks to all our listeners for tuning in. Let's hope for another great week following the Lothian's finest football team. and have a Merry Christmas when it comes round as well.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, everyone.
West Lothian is our battle cry. This is the place from which we hail. Livingston, oh Livingston, it's up to Ammonvale. Livingston, 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 oh Livingston, oh Livingston, we love it when you score. Livingston, oh Livingston, the Ammonville Lions roar. Livingston, oh Livingston, we realize our vision. Livingston, oh Livingston, into the